Alcorn. Hello, my name is Sophie Alcorn. I'm the founder of Alcorn Immigration Law in Silicon Valley. And I'm here today with Patricia. She's French, so I can't pronounce her last name correctly. So could you please say your name as you'd like it to be said?
Yes, I'm French-Italian, so Patricia Bottero Saint-Jean, and my company is open for business.
So we wanted to talk to you today about some options for international people from countries around the world, various countries, to come to the United States through investment. So how do you become an investor in the United States, and how do you get a temporary visa called an E2 visa to be able to live here and work here and build your business?
Yes.
So we both work with a lot of E2 business owners. My firm, Alcorn Immigration Law, does the visa side, and Patricia's company, Open for Business, helps you do all of the business planning aspects.
Right. Business research, identifying the business, the model of the business, whether it's a startup from your idea, or whether it's an acquisition from an existing business that is for sale, or the other alternative would be to choose a franchise, in which case you have a larger possibilities, larger choices, because you can choose from many types of industries, even though you may not be an expert in those industries.
So we get a lot of questions all the time from people who are very interested in understanding this visa, but don't know where to start. So we wanted to provide some information so that you would have the basics.
Great.
Yeah. So what are some of the most common questions you get?
Well, the common question typically is, how much does it cost? What kind of investment do I need to make? And I'm sure you have a better answer for this. But from the business side, you could start a business in theory for $10,000, right? But realistically, if you want a business that is going to be suitable for the E2 visa, you need a business that is going to have enough capital for you to not only ramp up the business, become profitable, but also support your family, support yourself and your family, and create jobs. And that's part of what the E2 visa requires, right?
And from an immigration perspective, there's no bright line rule. There's another program that we're not going to get into today called the EB-5 Investor Green Card. That's to stay here permanently. The investment amounts are much higher for that. It's currently either $500,000 or $1 million. That's different. What we're talking about today is a temporary investor visa. Typically in the past, my clients have invested between $100,000 and $500,000. And the goal is to be able to stay. You get your visa for a couple of years. You can stay for 2 years. You can renew it, and you can use that to start your small business.
Right. Yeah, so one question is, and also that's a question people ask, is how long can you stay here with an E2 visa?
So the length of the visa in your passport is determined by the U.S. government's relationship with your home country. So oftentimes the visa is issued for 5 years. And then typically every time you enter the U.S., you're allowed to stay for up to 2 years at a time.
Okay. But as long as your business is successful and profitable,
then you can keep renewing it.
You can keep renewing forever?
Yeah. Potentially, yes, indefinitely.
Great.
Indefinitely. Although some of my clients might want to get a green card at some point, especially as their children want to go to college here.
Right.
But yes.
Okay.
Could.
And one thing I've heard of that I thought was interesting is the E2 visa applicant, himself or herself, has to be attached to the business, has to operate the business, right?
That's correct.
That's different from the EB-5, right?
Yes,
okay.
That's correct.
So the E2 visa applicant has to operate the business, but what about the spouse of the E2 visa?
Well, it's really nice for the spouse. The spouse can get a work permit, and with that work permit, the spouse can work in whatever country. You can work in the United States with your work permit. You can work in any company that you want. So you could work in this family business, or you could do something else.
So they could technically apply to work with other companies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's say somebody, and that's just someone asked me that question earlier. Somebody has an HB1 visa, right? And the visa expires, or they can't come back, or could potentially one of the spouses, start the E2 visa process by investing in the business.
Yes.
And a lot of couples do that whether they are immigrants or not, whether they're foreign nationals or not.
Right.
They start a business, the husband or wife has a business and the other works in the company. So they could potentially do that.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's a great strategy. So if somebody's been here on H-1B, their 6 years are expiring, no employer has sponsored them for a green card yet, but you have some savings and you'd like to start a business and you're from one of these treaty countries that allow the E-2 visa, yes, your spouse could be the investor and run that company. The person who formerly had the H-1B could get the work permit and then continue being a software engineer or whatever professional occupation they previously had. So what are some of the top countries that you work with people from for the E-2? Because it's not every country. Like you can't do E-2 from China, you can't do it from India, but there's Brazil, a lot of countries that do have it, right? Like 80.
Right. The most European countries are 80. 80 countries that you can have that have a treaty with the U.S. I work with a lot of European countries.
Mm-hmm.
The UK, it's easier because the language is the same, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Australia, but also Canada. And then Italy, France, Germany. These are countries that are, definitely.
One of the ones that always is interesting to me is that Iran has an E-2 treaty with the United States. So we have such tense relations in so many other areas, but there's always been this E-2 possibility for people from Iran as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the E-2 visa, one of the reasons that visa is also a safe visa, considering that our current administration is very anti-immigration. But I was reading that the E-2 visa, because it is attached to a commerce and navigation relationship with the U.S. and other countries, that one is unlikely to be, a threat or to be eliminated down the road, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's highly likely because all of these came about from treaties between the United States government and the foreign country. It's not just a law passed by Congress.
Right.
So it takes a lot more to undo a treaty than a normal immigration law.
Okay, well,
so
that's good news.
Yeah,
right?
that's good news.
Yeah,
that's good news for everybody interested. What are some other questions that people usually ask?
Well, let's say, how long does it take for that E-2 visa from the immigration perspective?
Okay, so there's two different ways to do it. You can either apply in your home country at the nearest consulate to your home, or if you're already in the U.S., sometimes you can change your status within the U.S. and apply from here.
Okay.
So it's much slower to do it in the United States.
Is it?
Typically.
Oh, okay.
Although you could ask for premium processing, which is extra money and might speed it up. But, there's three different phases. There's the phase where you're figuring out what your company does, putting the money in there, organizing everything. Then there's a phase where your immigration law team is actively, and I think you would be involved from the beginning with the business planning and setting everything up.
You do need to have the business identified and technically paid for, at least a portion, before you get the visa approved.
Right. So we would work together from the very beginning to help you figure out what business you want to do and to make sure it would qualify for the E-2. And then once we get all that set up, we would prepare the visa application, which could be hundreds of pages. And then you schedule your appointment in your home country, you go to the consulate, or sometimes you mail in the documents before. Every country has its own policies. You have an interview, they might ask you for a few more papers, and then hopefully your visa will arrive in your passport and when they FedEx it back to you after your interview. So we've seen clients do this process in as little as 3 months if they're very motivated. Often though, it takes about 6 months.
Okay. And from the business perspective, you do need at least, depending on the type of business that you're looking into investing, you do need at least a couple of months to do the research.
Right.
If you're looking at a franchise, really to do a good job looking at several types of franchise in depth before you jump in, I would recommend at least 6 weeks if you're diligent about following up with a franchisor and having the communication. 6 weeks of figuring out, and And typically, you may want to, allow more time because you may look at a franchise and at the end you say, yeah, I'm not so sure this is the right one, right? So we keep looking until we find the right one. And the process is, the information that we collect from your likes and dislikes on different types of business is recycled. So as we move forward, we have a better, clearer idea of what is going to be the business for you. And the business really needs to start with you. It's not about what is a hot franchise or what is a hot business to get into.
You want to make sure it's something you want to be doing for the next 5, 10, however many years.
And it needs to be in alignment with your goals.
Absolutely.
Because if you want to make $200,000, some types of business can do that, others can't.
Right.
So we need to make sure we understand what are your goals and what are your objectives. Not just in income, but in lifestyle and also equity that you might want to build.
One thing that we've been seeing under the current presidential administration with one of the executive orders is called Buy American, Hire American. So we're now advising people that if possible, it would be better to actually start hiring some American employees before you go have your visa interview. Okay. I know that can be difficult, but if it's possible, or maybe there's other creative things we can do to show your commitment to hiring Americans, but that's something that's really important.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So let's see. We're going to wrap up in just a minute, but anything else we want to cover here? In general, just a summary, I think the E2 visa can be a great option for people who have an interest in starting a business. Even if you've never run a business before, you can still make this happen. You can still, get the tools to become a business owner and do it successfully, and that's something Patricia could help you with. It can be great if, as opposed to other visa options, if you want your spouse to be able to work. Your kids can go to school here. You can bring any child who's under 21 to come here with you. But if you end up coming and you like it, then we have to think about green card options, because if your kids grow up here, but then they turn 21 and they're here, but then they can no longer be under your E2 visa, they're going to need another option. Right.
Well, if your business does really well, perhaps you can turn this into an EB5 visa.
That's true. Right? You could. You could pivot if and then if you reinvest the profits or you invest additional funds, if your investment meets that $500,000 level for a targeted employment area, which doesn't, which is an area that the government says needs to have more jobs, or $1 million for any business, then yes, you could potentially pivot it into a green card.
Well, maybe we'll cover that later.
That could be our next video.
Okay,
well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sophie.
Yes, thank you, Patricia. And if you have any questions, you can visit our websites. For Alcorn Immigration Law, our website is alcorn.law, L-A-W. And your website, Patricia?
It's Open for Business Co. openforbusinessco.com.
And feel free to contact us. We'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Cheers.